A Siren Song, Part 1. Morning in Safehaven began softly, as if the world were still deciding whether to wake or not. The harbour breathed in long, gentle gusts. Light from the vale filtered down in muted silver, draping itself across pale cliffs and woven driftwood homes. Beneath the water, dragon spirits turned in slow, patient circles, shifting patterns of turquoise light along the sea floor. Their glow rose through the surface like a shy shimmer of a forgotten moon. At the far end of the dragon-scale dock, where the scales gleamed faintly with every wave, sat Ilsi, motionless, quiet, as steady as driftwood wedged into sand. Some mornings she sat cross-legged, some with her feet in the water, but always with the same stillness, as though any movement might disturb something sacred. Her gaze never wavered from the horizon. Not once had she missed a dawn, not through the turnings of season after season. The dock had learned the shape the way a grove learns its keeper. Those who lived in Safehaven had grown accustomed to the silhouette of the Dryad waiting at the harbour's edge. Some found it tender, some found it unbearably sad. But no one disturbed her. In Safehaven, sorrow was treated like weather. You did not fight it, you let it pass over you, respectful and patient. Ilsi watched the water breathe and waited for a song that no longer came. The veil above the harbour thickened slightly, responding to the quiet ache beneath it. It did that sometimes, leaning closer, as if listening. Ilsi was a Dryad of the western coast once, born of a grove that tasted salt in the air and drank deep from the cliffside soil. Like all Dryads, she held gender the way trees held seasons, inwardly, quietly, something that was felt more than shown. Outsiders always looked for signs in the wrong places: bark-textured skin, leaf-patterned hair, the shape of shoulders. But Dryad identity lived elsewhere, in sap tone and root echo, in the pulse that resonated between tree and body. Her own sap tone had once been warm, steady, grounded, until the strangers came. Until machines tore through her grove and left her bound a tree in pieces, roots upturned, branches discarded and leaves scattered. Her identity cracked inward. Something essential snapped. Dryads called it rootbreaking. That moment you felt your place in the world shatter, and yet your body kept achingly breathing anyway. She had wandered far after that, south, then north, then anywhere her feet carried her when her mind could not. Dryads were not meant to travel so far from their groves. Distance felt like a fever that spread through the bones. But remaining near the ruined stumps hurt worse. So she walked, and eventually, exhausted and hollowed, she reached Safehaven. While she could not tell you the journey, she did remember her arrival with a clarity that still startled her. The harbour had been wrapped in early fog, but there was no threat in it. The veil hung soft to hear. The cliffs breathed quietly. The water shone with the faintest pulse of dragonlight. Human machinery failed in these waters. Even their boats spluttered and stalled if they approached without reverence. The first deep breath she took in Safehaven felt like a cool rain sliding down sunburnt skin. The land here did not ask anything of her. It held itself gently, a kindness she had forgotten the world could offer. The townsfolk greeted her with soft nods and open palms, then went on their mornings. No one asked her where she had been. No one asked how long she would stay. For the first time since her tree fell, her breathing steadied. She had begun to heal in small ways, not in leaves or blossoms or bark, but in the subtle loosening of something clenched behind her chest. And then, at dusk one evening, she heard the first song. She had been sitting near the shoreline, watching how the tide lifted broken shells and returned them gently to soft sand. The day had been long with memory, leaving her feeling adrift, untethered, a Dryad without a route to call home. The horizon shifted, then sound moved across it like silk catching the wind. A single siren note unfurled over the harbour, long and low, shimmering with emotion so pure it did not need words. Bioluminescent flecks stirred beneath the water. Dragon spirits rose slightly, their glow responding in soft ripples. Ilsi froze. The song moved through her like water through drought-cracked earth. Her chest loosened. Her breath trembled. Something ancient inside her softened, as though remembering rain. It wasn't magic. Sirens did not cast spells. Their voices stirred emotion through resonance, not enchantment. But this voice, it felt like something touching the bruised places beneath her skin with tender fingertips. Without deciding to, she stood, and as though following a thread tied around her heart, her feet found the dragon-scale dock and carried her along its length in slow, uncertain steps. At the end of the dock stood a woman, hair damp with sea spray, shoulders relaxed. She sang not to perform, not to impress, but simply because the water asked her to. Her voice shaped itself around the harbour's breath, not demanding attention, yet impossible to ignore. When she sensed Ilsi's presence, the song changed. It warmed, it softened, turned toward her in a way that felt impossibly intimate, like a tide recognizing a moon's pull. Ilsi's breath caught as the woman opened her eyes. Their first words were so simple that Ilsi remembered them with reverence. "I did not mean to call anyone," the siren said. Her voice no longer sang, but even her speaking tone carried resonance, a subtle echo of ocean caves. Ilsi's reply rose from somewhere steady and broken inside her. "I did not mean to answer." Mara. She would learn the name later, studied her the way a sailor studies the horizon before choosing a path. Not for gender, not for appearance, for something deeper. A reading of grief, of stillness, of a root-broken Dryad who had survived but did not yet know how to live again. Mara lifted her hand a fraction, a question, not a gesture. Ilsi nodded, unable to find the breath for words. Then their hands met lightly in the soft space between. The sea calmed, dragon spirits drifted closer beneath the dock. Tiny rings of light expanded outwards on the water's surface like ripples stirred by a gentle exhale. Something settled between them, something without name. Ilsi felt it like the first green shoot rising from a stump you'd thought dead. Tides passed, the light shifted, seasons turned quietly through their growing closeness. One evening, sitting with their legs dangling above glowing water, Mara confessed something in a whisper that barely disturbed the air. "I have always found my way home by lights, stars, lanterns on far shores, a glimmer on the waves when everything else goes dark. I think that's why I find you so easily." Ilsi looked at her, confused. Mara smiled, soft as tide foam. "You feel like the light that waits for me to come home, my shore light." Ilsi absorbed the word like warmth. She had been known for so long only by the name of her tree. This was different, a name born of affection rather than lineage. She felt it settle softly, deeply within, in a place no root-breaking could reach. Shorelight. She did not blush, Dryads rarely did, but her chest felt warmer, as if a small sun had been placed there. Their ritual began without planning. Every time Mara left on a voyage, the harbour felt slightly dimmer. Days turned quieter, the sea held its breath just a little. But whenever she returned, her song carried across the water before her ship even touched the dock, a song born of belonging, announcing safe passage and calling the one she returned to. The first note always found Ilsi no matter where she stood. Her feet moved before thought, down the cliff paths, across tide-carved steps, through silk-soft stand, onto the dragon-scale dock, always there by the time Mara stepped off her ship, sea-damp and smiling. It became her new root system, the rhythm of her days, her chosen grove, one kept not in soil but in song, until the night Mara did not return. She had joined a raid against stranger supply ships, an act of quiet defiance common in Safehaven, where waters refused to bow to human machinery. With a soft brush of her lips, she promised she would return before the next bright moon. Safehaven's ships limped home with torn sails and wounded crew, but Mara's ship never appeared, and no song ever rose over the harbour. Ilsi stood at the edge of the dock long after others had left, long after the dragon spirits sank deeper beneath the waves, long after the veil thickened overhead, responding to the silent heaviness that gripped the town, that gripped the Dryad. Many bright moons passed. Each dawn found Ilsi on the dock. Each dusk sent her home again. Her silhouette became part of Safehaven's landscape. The young ones whispered that the Dryad must have roots hidden under the scales. Elders touched her shoulder gently when past, acknowledging grief without intruding upon it. The veil sometimes thinned for her, sensing devotion the way it sensed sorrow. Other times it hung heavy, making her breath slow, the world dimmer. But she did not stop. She waited, because the alternative felt like cutting the last living branch of herself. Then, one grey morning, a ship's captain she knew approached her with hesitation. "Would you walk with me?" he asked. She followed him into his cabin. Maps lay scattered across the table, marked with currents and rumours. "I hear things," he murmured. "Waterfay near Black Harbour, whisper of a strange trade, something sailors pass among themselves." Ilsi remained still as driftwood. He lowered his voice, a siren's voice, bottled, sold as a curiosity. The floor moved under her, or maybe she moved instead. Her breath grew shallow. Her voice emerged thin. A siren's voice cannot exist without the one who sang it. "No," he agreed, "it cannot." He looked at her with regret. "I cannot risk my crew to chase stories, but I thought you should know." She placed her hand over his, a gesture of thanks. She asked for nothing more. She had received something far greater, direction. That night, Ilsi walked the shoreline until her feet ached, and at dawn she left Safehaven. Her journey west along the coast unfurled in long, weary stretches. She climbed cliff paths where the wind scraped her skin raw. She waded river mouths, letting the water cool her aching steps. As she walked into moonlight shadow, the veil thickened. Its fog pressed against her lungs. Wordless echoes brushed her ears, and the weight of all of it settled like a dying forest. Still, she walked on, steady, stubborn. When weariness began to hollow her, the land changed. She passed stumps and scorched earth, straight lines cut where forests once stood. Her heart threatened to break anew as memories of her grove rose unbidden. Humans had carved roads through living places, and she could feel the land beneath her aching. Human territories thickened around Black Harbour. Smoke rose in dull, choking columns. Metal clanged, ships creaked under loads of cargo. People shouted, hurried, never looking at the sky, never listening to the water. She learned to hide her Dryad features, braided her leaf-like hair, cloaked her bark-textured arms, practiced heavier steps. Humans rarely looked closely unless profit gleamed behind someone's eyes. Rumours guided her, spoken in alleyways, whispered in taverns. A baron along the canal boasting of trophies gathered at sea, one in particular, a glass bottle said to hold the voice of a siren who defied them. A pirate siren, they called her. Ilsi's breath shook. Still, she listened longer than she meant to, memorizing what little she could. By nightfall, she knew where her feet would carry her. She entered the baron's estate under cloud-thick night. Human homes were loud even in stillness. Pipes hissed, lamps fluttered, machinery buzzed somewhere deep within the walls as she moved where the house would not answer back. The trophy room announced itself soon enough. Glass cases lined the walls, each holding something that did not belong there. She found the bottle on the middle shelf, ordinary glass, simple stopper, a faint shimmer swirling inside like distant light caught in water. When she touched it, she felt something frayed, but still quietly alive. She closed both her hands around it and held it to her chest. She could not hear Mara's voice, nor tell if the presence belonged to her at all. This place did not allow for listening. With the bottle tucked away, she fled before discovery, slipping through shadows and out into the night. She walked the dark streets like a whisper, carried by something deeper than words. Beyond the town she found a small stand of trees, thin, scarred, barely surviving, but trees all the same. Then, and only then, did she stop. She knelt beside the largest trunk and pressed her hand to its bark, asking for shelter. The tree answered with a faint shiver of recognition, and did not turn her away. Ilsi held the bottle to her chest and stayed there, breathing until the tightness eased, until her weight settled and the ground beneath her felt steady again. Through the glass, a fragile thread brightened, something unmistakably Mara's, a familiar steadiness, a pulse-like tide returning to shore. Alive. Mara was alive. Ilsi curled around the bottle and wept until there was nothing left to hold back. She wept for her tree, for the land, for Mara, and when even those tears were spent, she wept for herself. When the tears finally stilled, she leaned her forehead against the trembling trunk and whispered, her voice raw, "I will find you, no matter how far I must walk, no matter what the strangers build between us." The trees rustled weakly, offering what little strength they had left. Ilsi rose. She turned away from the east, away from Safehaven, and faced Black Harbour. Beneath the smoke and the rumours lay an answer, one that might lead her back to the woman who once called her Shorelight. She did not know what waited there, but she did not walk empty-handed. In her hands was a voice, quiet and bottled, but undeniably alive.